Okay, so today we're talking about cancer. But I want you to think of it less like a disease and more like a story. It's a story about a rebellion, really. A full-on civil war that happens inside our own bodies when the most basic rules of our cells get completely shattered.
I mean, just think about it for a second. Your body is this bustling city of something like 37 trillion cells, and they all work together in this incredible, beautiful harmony. They have this unwritten contract, a set of strict rules they all follow to make sure everything just works. It's this amazing system of cooperation.
But that makes you wonder, right? In a system that massive, that complex, what happens when some of those cells just decide to stop following the rules? What happens when they go rogue? Well, that question, that's the very heart of what cancer is. To really get what's going on with this rebellion, we first have to understand the law. So before we get into how cancer breaks all the rules, let's take a look at the very elegant system that our healthy, law-abiding cells follow, especially when it's time to grow and divide. You see, normal cells are actually really polite. They don't just divide whenever they want. First off, they need a signal from the outside, a specific protein called a growth factor, that basically gives them the green light. Second, they respect personal space. It's called density-dependent inhibition, which is just a fancy way of saying when things get too crowded, they stop dividing. And third, they have to be anchored. They literally have to be attached to a surface to even start the division process. These three rules keep everything orderly and under control.
So, now that we know the rules, we can see cancer for what it really is. It's a complete and total loss of that control. It's a breakdown of cellular law and order.
At its absolute core, this is it. This is the definition of cancer. It's what happens when cells just stop listening, when they ignore their neighbors and they just divide and divide and divide without any restraint. It's pure cellular anarchy. And they managed to pull this off by basically tearing down their own internal safety systems. You can think of them like checkpoints or red lights in the cell division process. Cancer cells figure out how to just blow right through them. And that's where the trouble really starts. So how does a cell actually go from good citizen to total outlaw? Well, it all comes down to its genetics. And the easiest way to think about its growth controls is with a really simple analogy. Two switches, kind of like the pedals in a car. On one side, you have what are called proto-oncogenes. These are the accelerators. They're totally normal, healthy genes that, when you push them, tell the cell, go, it's time to divide. Then, on the other side, you have the tumor suppressor genes, and you guessed it, these are the brakes. Their job is to tell the cell to stop. So cancer is basically what happens when a mutation gets that accelerator pedal stuck to the floor or when the brakes just completely fail. Let's look a little closer at that accelerator. A proto-oncogene is a good guy, right? It's essential for normal growth. But when a mutation hits it, it morphs into what's called an oncogene. And that's an accelerator that is just jammed down, constantly screaming at the cell to divide, divide, divide. A really well-known example of this is the RAS gene. Okay, so now for the brakes. The tumor suppressor genes, they're the guardians of the cell. Their whole job is to slam on the brakes and halt division if something is wrong, like if the cell's DNA gets damaged. But if they get a bad mutation, well, the brakes are just gone. The cell can't stop, even when it absolutely should. And the most famous, most important example of this is a gene called P53. And P53 isn't just any gene. You could call it the single most important enforcer of the entire cellular rulebook. And here's the kicker, the point you really have to get. For a cell to become cancerous, it absolutely must find a way to take out P53.
Here's how a healthy P53 is supposed to work. It's like a first responder. As soon as it detects DNA damage, say from UV radiation or chemicals, it slams on the brakes, stopping cell division in its tracks. Then it calls in a repair crew of enzymes to fix the problem. If they fix it, great, the cell can move on. But if the damage is just too bad, P53 makes the ultimate call. It forces the cell to self-destruct. It's a process called apoptosis, and it prevents that damaged genetic code from ever being passed on. But here's the tragedy when P53 is broken. The enforcer is basically asleep at the wheel. DNA damage gets detected, but the faulty protein does nothing. It fails to stop cell division. So that damaged cell, full of dangerous mistakes, is allowed to divide, passing on all its errors to its daughter cells. And this is how mutations pile up, and how a cell starts down that dark path to becoming cancerous. All right, so we've seen the failure happening at this tiny genetic level. Now let's zoom out and see how that microscopic problem creates a huge physical one in the body, the tumor. So when these out-of-control cells start piling up,
they form a mass, what we call a tumor. But here's the thing, not all tumors are the same. A benign tumor is like a contained rebellion. The abnormal cells stay put, right where they started, in a single lump. They're usually not life-threatening. A malignant tumor, on the other hand, that's a full-blown invasion. The cancer cells are no longer stuck in one place, they break away. And this process of spreading, it has a name: metastasis. The malignant cells get into the highways of the body, the blood and lymph systems, and they travel, like fugitives spreading their rebellion to distant parts of the body. They can settle down in new organs and start brand new tumors, messing up functions all over. This is what makes cancer so incredibly dangerous. But here's the hopeful part. Understanding cancer as this disease of uncontrolled growth has also given us some really clever strategies to fight back against this cellular rebellion. Traditional treatments like radiation and chemo, you can think of them as a sledgehammer. Their strategy is to attack all cells that are dividing quickly. And yeah, that hits the cancer hard, but it also causes a lot of collateral damage to healthy cells, like your hair follicles. But a much newer approach, targeted therapy, is more like a scalpel. It's designed to attack only the cancer cells by blocking very specific proteins that are unique to their rebelling. This new strategy has led to some truly game-changing drugs, like Gleevec. It was one of the very first therapies designed to go after a protein found only in certain cancer cells. It's like having a special key that can unlock and shut down the cancer cell, while leaving all the healthy cells next door completely untouched. And this really brings us to a final, pretty hopeful thought. By understanding cancer not just as a lump, but as a system with very specific genetic flaws, a broken accelerator or failed brakes, we've learned how to exploit its weaknesses. So the big question is, as we get better and better at finding and targeting these unique flaws for each individual person's cancer, are we finally truly entering a new era in how we fight this cellular civil war?